Hey everyone, Josiah here. So there's this common piece of advice that's been floating around the the interwebs for years when it comes to content creation, and it goes something like this: um, "It's not about you; it's about your audience." Right. So if you've heard that before, that advice of when you're creating something, when you're writing something, putting together a YouTube video, whatever it is, don't talk about yourself. Talk about your audience. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. And so we'll dig into that um, in a few minutes. But the first thing I wanted to, so what we're doing today, the last few days, we've been walking through each day at a time, one chapter of my book at a time. And today's chapter is putting yourself into your content. And I got to say, the universe has really lined up the timing well, because honestly, man, I am just not feeling it today. Like, I woke up, I didn't sleep well. I woke up, it was a really busy weekend. It was good. Like, we celebrated my birthday, and I spent time with the kids. There's just a lot going on and a lot of chaos when you have 3 small kids, that, right? And I woke up this morning and I just was not feeling good. Like, I didn't feel like doing anything. I had no motivation. Just overall felt just kind of terrible. And it's in those moments where it's especially difficult for me to show up and put myself into my content, because I always err on the side of transparency. Like, just if for no other reason, it just takes a lot extra energy um to put on a face, to not be yourself. And I don't feel like dedicating extra energy to that kind of thing. So, normally with me, like, what you see is what you get. But for whatever reason, when I'm having one of these days, there's this there's this tension that where there's a voice in my head that says, you have to put on a brave face. You have to smile. You've got to, you can't let them see that, you're feeling depressed today, or you're just, you're feeling angry at the world today, or you've been watching way too many videos about the state of our politics in the US right now. And you're just like, want to punch somebody. Um, and that's just sort of how I feel today, man. And so it's no coincidence that today is a chapter where we're talking about putting yourself into the content. And I think that where this has been probably the biggest out of all the themes in the book, this has probably been the biggest challenge for me. And if you listen to the live recording that we did last week, you know that, and also the episode that's coming out next week, which I'm also excited about. But you'll know that some friends who are close to me really have pushed me on that the last few months. I was still kind of staying small and not putting myself out there. So we're going to talk about today why that's important, and how to start going about putting more of yourself into your content. So I'm going to pull up my screen here. So this is where it starts to get a little scary for a lot of people, where you realize that in order to make that connection with your audience, there's something about, like, you have to so both Adam Preiser, who's founded the YouTube channel WP Crafter, and Art Subject, I've interviewed both of them on the podcast, and what they talk about is putting Adam talks about putting your face on everything, right? Showing people that you are a person, right? And what Art talks about is that information is everywhere. Like, if someone wants to find out something, they can go and they can find pretty much anything they want to find for free, available for free. But what they can't get is you, right? Not just bringing your unique lens, but like bringing your personality into it. And because that's where that connection happens. And that's where people, going back to what I said earlier, So many people misinterpret the advice of it's not about you, it's about your audience. They take that and they use it as an excuse to not show up and put themselves into their content. I've seen this over and over and over again, and I've been guilty of this as well. Wanting to hide behind that excuse, and what that advice is really saying is create your content with your audience in mind. Like you're speaking to someone, but and so when you're creating something, make that someone that you're speaking to your audience, your avatar, whatever you want to call it. But what's missing from that advice is that you're not speaking for the sake of speaking. You're speaking to start a conversation, and that conversation has to be two-sided. And so you're coming at it from your own perspective with your own, thoughts and opinions and baggage or whatever. Bring that through. Start showing that, because that's what engages people in that conversation, and that's where you start to build loyal fans. So some questions I would ask you is, where can you step into being the personality of your brand more? Like, where are you hiding? And what habits can you create that support you in that commitment to putting yourself in your content and really becoming that authority or that leader in your niche? So Mike Ganino, when I interviewed him on the podcast, he's a storytelling coach and he hosts the Mic Drop Moment podcast, which is one of my favorites, for sure. And one of the things that he says, I love this quote when he talks about finding your voice. He says that, like, nobody took it, right? It's not hidden somewhere. It's not waiting for you in a park. You were separated at birth and your voice has been traveling the world trying to find you. Your voice is inside of you. And what's happened over time is that you've added layers, you've added filters, you've been told to be quiet, you've been told you weren't smart enough, you've been told whatever the thing is that that added all of this, you've just kept burying it inside. I think the mic drop moment happens for yourself in front of the audience when you say the truth. And that's what developing your voice is all about. You don't need to find it. It's in there, and you know what's true for you. And I think he just so brilliantly really gets down to the challenge here for most people is that in order to put yourself into your content and show up that way, it requires this level of vulnerability and self-awareness that most of us aren't comfortable with. And so we've got to practice getting comfortable with that, because you have to really get honest with yourself in order to develop that voice that you've been suppressing, or that other things have been suppressing in you your whole life. You have to get honest with yourself first, and that's where it starts. And once you do that, and once you start practicing that and flexing that, then it starts to come out in your content. And that's when you start to see the difference between, content that we all know the difference between content that was created for an algorithm versus content that was created for a person. Thankfully, it looks like the algorithms are getting smarter and able to tell more when content's created for a person. But we don't follow, like, people aren't. We're not inclined to follow the type of the content that is created without that human connection. Like, that's what we crave. So, where in your content, like, are you speaking your truth in your content? And where can you create more mic drop moments for your audience that move them to take action in your content? Brian Fanzo is another person that I love. He's always just unapologetically himself. And it's so great because, first of all, like, I love his heart. Like, his heart comes through in everything that he does, and you could see it. And then Ann Handley is another person who just is so, like, you can read her content without her name on it and know that it came from her, because she's just honed that craft of over and over the years, of her voice and developing that. So the last piece here is, how do you show up outside of the social algorithms, and are you giving yourself the freedom to be yourself? Are you building a community of customers with your content? So going back to that, are you, a conversation is two-sided, right? So how are you tying what you're doing into having those conversations and building out that community? And then the last question here is, what has to shift in the way that you show up in your content to make your bigger vision a reality? And that's what it all comes back to, is like, if you want to achieve the things that you're trying to achieve, if you want to build the business that you're trying to build, and have the content actually fuel the business, you're not going to be able to hide behind the curtain, right? You're not going to be able to just continue to stay small and to feel safe. Like it's going to require you, if you want to really build a business that's fueled by your content, you have to show up and put yourself into a content and take some hard stands on what your truths are and where you stand on things, because that's what's going to make you not only stand out in the crowd, but also that's what's going to attract people to you, the people who are like you, and it's going to repel the rest, as Chris Ducker talks about. When you show up and you are yourself, but that all comes back to getting honest with yourself and having that self-awareness to really identify what's true for you, and then to start developing that and letting that come out. So all that to say, I'm right there with you. I've been practicing this more and more and more. That was one of the main motivations behind doing these lives every day for the month of October for me, because it's forcing me to practice it in a very visible way, like more so than even the podcast has been. Showing up, not really knowing exactly what's going to come out of my mouth before I hit go live. Knowing, like, sort of like ignoring the fear that I could just come across as a complete idiot and no one wants to follow me anymore. But pushing past that and knowing that if I can be myself, I know that I come from a place where I have heart, and if I show up, I'm going to attract other people that also have that heart and also want to create the impact in the world that I want to create. So happy Monday, everyone. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the podcast for tomorrow's episode, and also go get your free copy of my book at businessherobook.com. And until next time, go be a hero, everyone.